And welcome back to Patriarchy Principles, the podcast where we explore the values of faith, family, and leadership in today's wild, crazy, and complex world. The show is about fostering honest conversations that lead to stronger communities, more empathetic relationships, and better understanding across the divides of gender and culture, especially in today's episode. I'm your host, Jay, and today we're diving into a topic that challenges traditional narratives about gender and sexism. Joining me today is Jack, a social worker, author, and advocate who has spent decades addressing male gender issues and their impact on society. Now, if you're listening to that and you just thought, well, men don't have gender issues, then you need to stay listening because just stay listening. Jack Works highlights the overlooked and often ignored way sexism affects men and boys. From his book, Goodwill Towards Men, to consultancy, Working Well with Men, Jack has been a consistent voice for exploring how these issues intersect with fatherhood, family dynamics, and societal well being. Today, we'll discuss the role of fatherhood in male identity, the importance of addressing male gender issues, and how these conversations can lead to a more balanced and equitable society. So, Jack, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jay. Good introduction.
Of course. Oh, thank you. Thank you. I pride myself on my intros. I try to make them good, short enough, long enough, but not too long, but not too short at the same time.
And also just a little provocative, right? Just a little bit of a teaser to get people to stay.
Just to get them going a little bit, just to get them going.
Yeah.
Like, ooh, 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 I want to listen to that kind of thing. So that's kind of where we're at right now. So, like I said, Jack, welcome to Patriarchy Principles. Can you start by sharing kind of what led you to focus on male gender issues and how this work for you has evolved over the years?
Yes, I can. So when I was a little kid, I had some experiences that gave me pause. But before I tell you what my experience was, let's talk about an experience we're more familiar with. If you were to come across a young girl, like say 8, 9, 10 years old, who was really good at sports, you would know that it's probably not a good idea to say to that little girl, gee, you're really good at sports for a girl. Or if she was really good at math or science, you would know that it's not really a good thing to say, gee, you're really good at math and science for a girl. We know that's not a good thing to say because it sort of delivers a message to young girls that there's something kind of odd about the fact that they're good at math and science, because that's not really, normal girls aren't like that. When I was a little boy, what I used to hear a lot was, gee, Jack, you're really good with babies for a boy. And the same feeling came across me. Really have any way to articulate it, didn't know what kind of context to put it in, but I just remember thinking, what's up with that? Why are they saying that? Why can't they just say I'm really good with babies? Why do they gotta, say, for a boy? And the reason I think these things on both sides of the gender equation are not good is because the statement for a girl or for a boy is sort of a way of reinforcing old gender roles. From way back when, we really had to specialize between what we needed men to do and what we needed women to do. Back when civilization was not as strong as it is now, when we were walking across the Serengeti, the grasslands of Africa, as a little band of humans, we were really in danger of being wiped out and going extinct. So we had to have the man specialize in keeping saber-toothed tigers at bay and being able to kill the saber-toothed tiger if one threatened the band, his woman and his kids. And we needed the women to be in charge of nursing the babies and birthing the babies and carrying the babies and keeping the babies safe. But we don't really need to specialize that much anymore. We don't really need to have a lot of worry about the need for men to be carrying around spears and be bulked up with muscles like crazy so that they can keep their wife and kids safe from a saber-toothed tiger. But still, we still have that vestige in our thinking about the proper roles and the needed roles, the best roles for men, and the proper roles and the needed roles and the best roles for women. And this idea of for a boy and for a girl are just ways of sort of reinforcing that. Boys don't mess around in the realm of taking care of babies, and girls don't mess around in the realm of science and math and sports and government and academia. It was a way of I felt it was sort of a way of saying, get out of here. You don't belong here. Something wrong with you. So that's how I remember it. Now, this is way back when I was a kid. And as I mentioned, I didn't have any context for it, didn't have any vocabulary for it, any way to articulate it. I just knew something was wrong there. Something was up with that. So that's the first inkling I have. So that's a fairly long answer to your question, but I could, go a lot longer just on that question. But I'll leave it to you, and you can tell me what you want to talk about next.
No, that's great. It sounds like it started out as something the way you're describing here, it sounds very primitive, it because that's where it started out, and it's kind of our primal roots, and then it evolved over time to kind of keep people separate. And the same way that race has evolved over time to keep people separate, to keep people in their own, class. Now we don't really have as many. We still have race issues, but now we have more class issues, right? There's always a separation of people, where people are people. Everyone has the same blood. Everyone has the same, the amount of chromosomes and DNA trends and things. Well, not everyone has the same amount of chromosomes. I take that back. But in theory, right, we're all humans. We all bleed red. We have different amounts of melanin in our skin. We have different cultures and things like that, right? But there's a lot of separation. There's a lot of separation, but there doesn't have to be, right? There doesn't need to be. I don't think it would be the worst thing if more men were less jelly and more, ready to take on a saber-tooth tiger. You know, I think that would be a good thing for our society as a whole if men were more focused on bulking and things like that versus being marshmallows. I can't speak for myself. I have a dad bod. I'm a little marshmallowy myself, but would I like to think that I could bulk up and try to take on a saber-tooth tiger if it came to it and I had enough time to prepare for that? Absolutely. I would do the things to do that. I would feel capable of doing that if I needed to.
What would you say if I were to agree with you and also say, but at what cost? I mean,
Yeah,
if to get bulked up well enough to kill a saber-toothed tiger with a spear were available to you at the cost of being at the gym every day and taking steroids and spending, 4, 5, 6 hours a day pumping iron and, not doing other things that you might ought to want to kind of sort, then you probably wouldn't really prioritize how great it would be to be bulked up so you could kill a saber-toothed tiger in the unlikely event one should appear in your neighborhood. Now, there are other physical challenges and risks that we have to be ready for, but being bulked up might not be the best way to deal with somebody who sticks a gun in your face. You
true.
know, yeah. So yeah, I mean, it would be wonderful if we were all like superhuman everythings, but you got to prioritize. And I have no doubt that the men listening to your podcast are doing their best, their level best, to prioritize, as you have mentioned, is their most important job, and that is to be a dad and take care of their kids and help them grow up happy and healthy, preferably in happy, loving partnership with a mother.
Absolutely. No, you're 100% right. I don't think I would do it for the steroids, but you know, people that when humans were fighting off saber-tooth tiger, there was no steroids then. They were just eating tiger meat from the last tiger they killed. You know, and other humans probably too for the meat. I that's neither here nor there, but I digress a lot there. But no, I 100% get what you're saying. At what cost? But I do think it's important and something that I am trying to get back to, taking more seriously. Is just health in general is very important to take care of. Is very important to focus on. I think that is a male gender issue that is very important.
Oh, definitely.
It's just
Yes,
being
definitely.
healthy and strong and whatnot, because you wanna be able to run to your gun faster than the intruder can get to you with their gun. You wanna be able to, you know, crawl through your home if you need to be stealth without making a lot of extra noises or banging into things, right? Or to leap over a baby gate or to step over a baby gate if you need to, or, to be a little agile when you need to be it, right? Those things are practical skills that you need in the home. If there's an intruder, someone with a gun in your face, right? You want to be
Yes.
able to duck and cover and things like that. So there are important things here, but I think being healthy is there. But I digress, going way off a tangent there, way off a
That's all right.
tangent. But okay,
It's a good point.
so why are male gender issues important to society as a whole?
Well,
Uh,
because men are important.
mm-mm,
Well, so men's issues are important because men are important. Men are important to society. Men's perspective as men is important to society. We talk a lot about the value of diversity, a little bit less now, with the thumbs down on a lot of big DEI initiatives, and I think there were plenty of problems with those. But the basic idea of diversity is that the more people who are affected by a problem, who can be involved in coming up with a solution to the problem, the more likely it is you're going to come up with a good solution that considers as many variables as possible. And so, when you're in a family and your kid is having a problem, a behavior problem or something happening to him or her at school, you want to have as many brains applied to that problem as you can. And in a family, that means primarily the people who love the child the most, the mother and the father both, to be involved in figuring out what do we do and how do we cooperate to brainstorm on how this should go. The man will come at it with one perspective. The female will come at it with another perspective. It's very likely that the man's perspective will be somewhat male-oriented, coming to him by virtue of his experiences as a male. And it's somewhat likely, very likely, that the mother is going to have a very different perspective based on her experiences of how to be a human being and how to solve human problems. So combining those two very different viewpoints is much better than just having one viewpoint, which is why, generally speaking, it's better for kids to have two parents than to have one. It's one of the reasons why, generally speaking, it's better for kids to have two parents rather than one.
yeah, no,
So men are important, and men need to be healthy. Men need to be respected. Men need to be safe. Men need to feel valued and appreciated. They need to be treated fairly in disputes that they might be involved in, whether it's a dispute with a stranger or with your wife. There's a lot of bias that operates at the implicit level against men. We talk a lot about implicit bias these days, and we know that there is implicit bias against blacks. A lot of implicit bias against black, just by virtue of them being black. A lot of people are, sort of suspicious and ready to string them up. But recent science has demonstrated, at least one study in a peer-reviewed journal, has demonstrated that the deepest, strongest, most pervasive implicit bias of all is against men. And so that's important to acknowledge, important to take action against, for us to call attention to. Because what that means is that, God forbid, the listeners of your show are young fathers. They have young wives. God forbid she should decide she doesn't love them anymore. And she decides that, of course, she doesn't want to leave the kids. She only wants to leave him. And maybe she wants to marry somebody else and take the kids to some other state and have some other man be the father. If she, in many states, there's only 3 states which have, I think, and the National Parents Organization thinks, have good rules and laws about, well, what do you do about that situation for the father to maintain his relationship with the kids? And it's called a shared parenting arrangement. But if she decides, if she's in a state that doesn't really favor shared parenting arrangements, she's got an unlevel playing field that favors her. And we need to work against that. I think I read in some of your materials that you talk about being socially active and socially engaged. Am I right?
No, you're
Yeah,
100% correct. You're 100%
yeah.
correct.
And so being socially engaged about making sure that men are treated fairly, all men, even if you are not being treated unfairly yourself, it's just good for the society and it's good for future generations. It's good for your sons as they grow up to know that they are going to be treated fairly. It's good for families. It's good for getting men to feel safe about investing heavily in the relationships with their kids. You know, you wouldn't ask a person to put money in your bank if it wasn't insured. Well, you might ask them, but they would be smart to say, well, you're not insured. No, I'm not putting my money in your bank. You're not going to invest there. It's also important to realize that it's counterproductive to ask men to invest heavily in their relationships with their kids if they are not insured, if they're not protected. So those are just a few of the ways in which paying attention to male gender issues and being fair and honest and decent, respectful, appreciative of men is a social value in which I think we are sorely lacking, which is why I love and admire what you are doing in honoring and protecting and talking about the need for fathers to be as wonderful and strong and influential as they can be in the lives of their kids.
100%. No, and I appreciate that. And I love that you brought up at the beginning there uh, about DEI programs are, well, they're dead now, or they're quickly dying. They were given a quick death sentence, a quick lethal injection, if you would, which I think is for the better of society. I think it's for the better of colleges as a whole to not have DEI programs. I think it's better for kids who are in the academic atmosphere of college to not be heavily influenced by DEI. They already are influenced by heavily liberal professors. I mean, it's like 90 something percent of professors at universities are liberal and whatnot. So it's very important that those are gone. It's very important that school funding is going to come down to eliminating DEI programs and federal funding for different federal offices. You know, it gets rid of this really unnecessary program and it brings the best people in. You know, of course, the people hiring will still hire who they hire and whatnot, and there'll be some bosses. There'll be the exceptions, right? But as a whole, you know, bringing back merit, bringing back earning your job, bringing back being the best candidate is going to be really important. And I think it's already been leveled. The playing field's been leveled at the corporate level that, you know, sometimes it's going to be your best candidate is going to be female, your best candidate's male, and so on and so forth. It doesn't matter who it is or what they are. It's about what they bring to the table. Can they help my business? Can they help me grow? Can they do the job? Can they be the best at doing the job? That's what matters. That's what truly matters. And putting it back on that playing field because with the DEI programs, it took it away from a lot of men who are just straight normal men being able to get some jobs because they're just straight men. They're not gay. They're not of color. They're not anything, you know, special, but they are just qualified to do the job, but they don't check enough boxes, right, for anything to keep up the quotas and things like
Do you
that.
know which president started affirmative action?
Was it Bush or Obama?
Before that, it was Richard Nixon, a
Oh, no, I
Republican,
didn't know.
a pretty conservative guy. And back in the original days of affirmative action, the idea was not about quotas. The idea was, look, we're going to affirmatively let people of color and women know that they are welcome to apply for these jobs. The idea wasn't to count noses. The idea was, at its best, there was no one definition of affirmative action, but at its best, the kind of affirmative action that I liked was the idea that if you are not qualified for the job, we can't hire you for the job, but we will help you. We will take it as our duty and responsibility as a caring society with some sense of justice to do what we can to help you get qualified for better and better and better jobs. That's the way I think it ought to be,
Yeah,
because we cannot deny that there were ways in which women were held down in terms of careers and business and jobs. And we cannot deny that there were many ways in which Black people and Native Americans were just really, really hampered economically. And, a
Absolutely.
just and caring society says, look, we can't hire you for this job because you're not qualified, but how can we help you get qualified? And, supporting them in education and skills training is, I think, a healthier way to go rather than just saying, I got to hire, I got to hire a black person. So here you come, you'll get the job. I can tell you a sort of a sad story of my worst experience with diversity, but it really has nothing to do with fatherhood. So maybe it's not a good use of our time.
Well, if you want to share, you can. There's no
No,
no harm.
no, I'd really rather talk about fatherhood.
Okay, no problem. But yes, so I think it's important that those programs have been eliminated because I think it will level the playing field, and it's important, right? And a lot of things you're saying there about men and the issues here at the societal level, there's a lot of people who will disagree. A lot of people who will disagree about men having these needs and having these issues, right? It's very common.
I sure know that, surely know that. However, let's talk about some ways in which you can sort of open their eyes. Would that help? Would that be helpful?
I think it would be helpful for a lot of people. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. One of the things I like to say is, well, first of all, just sort of a gentle thing for starters, although some people will take umbrage even at this. You can just say, well, to the person who's telling you that men don't have any problems and don't deserve any attention, you can say, well, to me, it sort of looks like this. Men aren't perfect, but we're great. And women are great, but they're not perfect. Can we agree on that? That's an easy way to start. And anybody who says, well, of course women are perfect. Name one thing we do that's wrong. Well, then, you just sort of say, see you later. I got better things to do than try to talk to you. And you don't get all worked up about their issues. Just bye-bye. Because it's pretty self-evident that most men are pretty good and no woman is perfect. That's for starters. And then another thing, if they'll agree with that, is to say, you know what the most sexist idea of all is? After they've said that they want to help work against sexism, the most sexist idea of all is that only men are ever sexist and only women are ever harmed by sexism. Women are sexist too. Men are harmed by sexism too. And, when a man is dealing with a divorce and his wife wants to take the kids away to some foreign state, completely and not completely, very significantly damaging his relationship with his kids, and she stands before the judge and says, Your Honor, I'm afraid of him. He gets so angry sometimes. Implicit biases flood the scene. Sexist biases flood the scene. Oh, this is a poor, helpless, innocent little woman, and she is afraid of this man who's got a beard and a mustache, and he wears a black baseball cap into my courtroom. Yeah, he's a bad guy. I can feel it. I know it. And he's very safe and ruling in the woman's favor. And it's not always just judges, because judges will tell you they hate dealing with divorce cases. It's also, at the level of social workers, because social workers will do custody evaluations. And I'm a social worker, and I went to social work school. And social work is very heavily invested in this idea of men as oppressors and women as oppressed. And many of them are invested in the idea that shared custody, shared parenting, we have to oppose this because it endangers women and children. And it's just a way for men to manifest their need and their desire and their drive and their urge for power and control. So that's all sexist bias, and it's out there and it's at work, and we really need to, for the sake of a healthier society and healthier families and healthier, happier kids, to say, knock it off, stop. It's wrong, and you're being bigoted, biased, and sexist. And if you need a model for what I'm talking about, just look back 60 years ago at all of the sexist biases that were at work operating against women to keep them out of non-traditional male spaces. You're doing the same thing to keep us as fathers out of traditional female spaces of being the primary parent with the primary relationship with the kids. And when you say, well, I'm the mother, you're really no better than a man in a corporation saying, I'm the man. I'm the one who should get this job, not you. You're just a woman. We got to stop this. And unfortunately, what's passing for feminism now, the social movement, the political lobby that passes for feminism now really is not advancing the causes of men to be treated equally and fairly. Feminism got to the point where women had pretty much what they want. When they saw that men were being interested in getting into female territory, well, then they had a problem. And the way they solved their problem was to, rather than to negotiate with men and bargain with men, what would you guys like? Here's what we would like. We would like fairness in the corporate world. What would you like? Instead of them asking what we would like, they decided they didn't have to ask what we would like because they branded us as their oppressors. And you don't negotiate with your oppressors. You don't have to. You don't need to. It's perfectly fair to treat them unfairly because they're your oppressors. And that's really basically what's going on. Feminism calls us oppressors, so it doesn't have to treat us with any kind of respect or fairness. And so we got to stop this.
Yeah. No, feminism also, is a justification to a means, right? It justifies really shitty behavior. It justifies really shitty actions. It justifies anything that could be wrong is wrong, that the woman could be doing wrong in terms of a relationship or divorce or custody hearing or things like that. It justifies all those things, right? It encourages it even. It encourages you to be shitty, be crappy, be all these things, right? And
Yes,
be proud
yes,
of it.
because the woman knows that there is this mantra out there that is very influential with decision makers. Believe the woman.
Yeah, believe all women. Yeah.
Believe all women. Believe the woman in this dispute, which is basically a way of saying, call the man a liar.
Yeah. Which happens, which we've seen happen on a big scale. The one I can think of that's two of the biggest ones are, of course, the Johnny Depp and the Amber Heard one. That was a huge one. And then we see it again with the Trevor Bauer case,
I'm not familiar with the Trevor Bauer case.
the
What
baseball
happened
player.
there?
The baseball player where he
Okay.
basically so he was accused of having extra rough sex with a woman that was non-consensual, and then she took pictures and things like that and made up a whole case, but then it turns out after an investigation and court proceedings and everything like that, he was cleared, she made it up, and her friend put her up to it, and they were trying to get money off this dude to make him settle and things like that, and he stuck to his guns like, "It was consensual, I'm not paying her a penny, I'm not doing that, I'm not falling for it."
Yep, I do remember that case. I do remember that case. And I believe he missed a whole season. Wasn't he suspended by Major League Baseball for a
Yep,
whole
he
season?
was suspended for a season and a half pretty much. But baseball also hates Trevor Bauer because he's branded himself and he's kind of the black sheep and he's made money off his name. He's made the money off of his name, not the MLB being able to make money off his name and talent and things like that. So he's still blacklisted. Teams still won't give him a contract, even the cheapest bottom dollar contract for someone who's still 31, 32 in his prime, still can pitch at an elite level, has shown he can pitch at elite level in Mexico and you know, Japan and, just done really well for himself still, so we'll
So correct me if I'm wrong about this. What I most remember reading about Trevor Bauer after reading about how horribly he was treated, what I most remember, what was most disappointing, correct me if I'm wrong, I hope I am, was that he said what a lot of men say after they escape a death trap like this. He said, man, I just want to get on with my life. He didn't say anything about, and I'm going to start a foundation or I'm going to start an organization to make sure this never happens again to any man. I used to be the executive director of an organization that was primarily devoted to, our motto was preserving the promise of fatherhood. It was largely an organization of divorced fathers. And it was very difficult to scale this organization up and give it any real political clout because Men would come in because they were drowning. We would try to save them. And if we were able to, they would climb out of the pool as fast as they could and head for the dry ground, the high ground. It's understandable that men who go through these horrible situations they don't want to continue dwelling on them. It's like a form of PTSD, and they just want to get away and try to recover a normal life. But it's got to stop. We have to figure out a way to stop it. And one of the ways to stop it is to incorporate uh, the help and support of good women, because they bring a lot of energy, a lot of smarts about working together as a team, as a social movement. And they're really wonderful women in our lives, really appreciate us for being who we are, and not just being, carbon copies of women.
Sorry about that.
It's all right.
I agree. No, I agree with you there. We don't want to be carbon copies, right? We don't want a carbon copy of a woman. They don't want a carbon copy man, right? If
All right.
that was the case, then, we would see a very different society. We would see very much a Barbie world. We see a bunch of Kens and a bunch of Barbies, and that's all we would get. And I don't think anyone really wants that, because it's very shallow, right? There's not a lot of depth to anyone's personality.
Yes, it's shallow, and it also deprives us of the ability to sort of put binocular vision on our problems. You got an eyeball over here and an eyeball over here, and you can sort of, using binocular vision, get a good idea of where that problem is. So you can figure out how to get a hold of it. And, you got women looking at it like this, men looking at it like that. We have some clarity about exactly how big it is and where it is.
Yeah, no, it's great when we can work together. When we can work together, that's great.
Yep.
You said something interesting earlier that I'm still thinking about. You mentioned when in like a court setting, the 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 women can say, and let me go back and preface this a little bit more. There's an unfair advantage in the court system for women versus men. In majority of states, in majority of counties, in majority of courtrooms across the states, you got to break it down all the way to the county level. I feel like you can't really go state by state, because it really goes commissioner by commissioner. Honestly, at the end of the day, who is going to be on that stand? What are their values? What are their views? How do they judge? What is their history? Things like that. And so you kind of have to know your commissioners and who you're going to get on your docket to know if you're going to be standing a fair chance or not. At least from what I've seen. And I've been in those courtrooms in my profession. I've been in those courtrooms supporting these different families and whatnot. And it really comes down to the commissioner. It may not be the state. Like, I live in Washington State, so a very blue state through and through, even though demographics and voting numbers will tell you something different, but that's neither here nor there. There's really 5 blue counties in the state of Washington, and the rest are red. But I digress there. But it comes down to the commissioners, and we have very good commissioners in the counties I live in, the 2 counties that I work in. They're very honest, they're very fair.
What part of Washington are you in?
I'm in Benton, Franklin County, so I'm in, like, the Columbia River, Greater Columbia area. So we have very good county commissioners here, very good judges. They're very fair, they're very equal. And I've seen moms get discredited in court as often as I see dads get discredited in court. And that's something I thought I would never see. But this judge, he took the time, he reviewed everything. This dad was representing himself in one of these cases, and he ended up winning by a lot. He ended up winning, having her disproven, discredited in court, and it was an amazing, amazing process to sit and watch. Because, for me, it gave me hope. Like, this really does exist. For my case in particular, too, when I got divorced, I was granted 50-50, and I could have gotten more. I didn't. I stuck with 50-50 and gave that up to allow for that. And, most people are still confused when I talk to them about it. Like, oh, so you have them this weekend. I'm like, no, I have them this week. There's no end. I have them this week. There's no weekend. There's no duh. It's a k
Yeah.
sound there. So it's very, very interesting, but it's something that is an unlevel playing field, and something that you have to be really aware of, going into the process, and really, strive to protect yourself.
Would I be correct in guessing that the blue counties where you would be less likely to have this happy result are the counties where most of the people in Washington are?
Correct. Yeah. I remember I have a family member that went through a divorce way back when. And when she was going through divorce with her husband at the time, the attorney, she was having a hard time finding an attorney, a really hard time finding an attorney, because every attorney she went to, and this is in one of those blue areas, every attorney that she went to would say, "Oh, so you want to take him down, right? Or how much are we going after for him? Or how much are we? Or how much do you want to get out of him?" Kind of thing. And she would just approach him. She would just come back like, I don't want to do that. I don't want that. I don't want to take him down. I don't want to do this. And that was, some of my experience too in that was like, you know, I just want this to be civil. I want this to be normal. And it was a hell of a time trying to find, for myself when I was going through it too. And I live in one of the red areas. It was like, none of you guys really align with what I'm trying to do. And like, I couldn't even get an attorney to listen to me, let alone like hear me out. Beyond that, they would just like argue and fight with me, like, "Oh, well, you're gonna have to do child support and all blah 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 blah," and like all this jargon and stuff. I'm like, wait, just listen. That's not the case here. It's like, well, that's how it is. Blah 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 blah. I'm like, that's not how this case is. This is not how I want it to be. Like, if I'm going to hire you, you're going to work for me. You're going to do what I want. So that's my biggest thing here. If you are going to seek legal representation, make sure they're on your side and do what you're wanting them to do, kind of thing. Don't find someone that's going to be focused on tearing down the other person and things like that if that's not what you want. I don't think anyone should want that at the end of the day, because it comes back about the kids, right? It comes back about the kids and erasing some of that like stigma around like fatherhood and things like that. That'll always be there, kind of thing.
Is mediation available in Washington State?
It is. It is. But I believe you have to have filed first. You have to have filed, and then you have like one little mediation session like before your court hearing, like within a week or something. And yeah, there's not a lot offered, but it is offered. Yes.
Yeah, one of the primary opponents, besides the women who say that shared parenting is just a way for men to maintain their power and control over women, and they say it endangers women and children. The other primary opponent is divorce lawyers, because they don't want people to solve problems amicably. They basically are hired guns, and they want as many bullets flying as they can generate. So shared parenting, the beauty of shared parenting is that neither parent has to fear that they are going to be annihilated as parents without some very strong justification for the state to do that. And so it keeps people calm, keeps people civil. I do want to mention that when you could have gone for 50, you could have gone for more than 50-50. I want to point out and congratulate you. I don't know the full details, but one of the reasons that research shows that kids in the custody of fathers, if there's a single parent situation, kids who are with single fathers do better generally than kids who are with single mothers. And the primary reason for that, it's not just that because fathers are great parents, which they are. It's because, in addition to that, fathers are much more likely to respect the child's need for the other parent than a single mother is to respect the child's need for the other parent who is a father. So it's a good thing about men. It's an honorable thing about men. And honor is a very strong value among men, which is another reason why we need to protect and give voice to men and men's values.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and there's a lot of benefits, right, to having both parents involved. And if both parents are able to be involved, there's nothing wrong with either parent. Of course, there's the exceptions to all this, right? If maybe one of the parents is violent, maybe one of them is extra manipulative, but maybe one of them has extreme addiction or mental health issues or things like that, right? There's all those exceptions, right? But if none of those are at play here, it should just be okay, 50-50. That's just the obvious answer here, right? It shouldn't go through a whole court proceeding to where the kids are being dangled and things like that and, made out to be the prize. It's like, if there's nothing wrong, and that should just be common sense. If there's nothing wrong with the mom, there's nothing wrong with the dad. They just, something happened in the relationship that was, out of one's control and more in one's control, and one made a choice versus the other kind of thing, then that's what it is, right? But if there's nothing wrong with her, there's nothing wrong with him, then, it's that's what it should be. It shouldn't be anything else.
It's what it should be, because the divorce is not between the parents and the kids. The divorce is between the parents and the parents. It's the two
Exactly.
parents who are divorcing. And kids, you got to keep in mind what's best for the kids. It's not about your grudge against him, your grudge against him, or your grudge against her. It's not about what the parents need. It's about what do the kids need. And the kids need their parents.
Yeah, they need both of
Just
them too.
it's the beauty. Yeah, it's the beauty of shared parenting.
Yeah, they need both of them. They 100% need both parents. Let's see. How can we start to create a better dialogue around gender issues that respects and addresses the experience of both men and women?
Well, with a little humility on both sides would be a start. But men have started this a long time ago. Men had strong occasion to be told and demonstrated to them that they needed to be a lot more humble about how great men are versus women. We have learned to recognize that it's not fair to say, it's not true to say that women can't be good corporate executives, for instance. It's not right or fair to say that women can't be good doctors, women can't be good scientists, women can't be good astronauts, women can't be good lawyers. We've accepted that. We've sort of stepped down from our high horse about how much better than men are in these career opportunities. So when I talk about humility, I would give men like an A- right now for adopting some more humility. What grade would I give to women right now in terms of humility and what they think of themselves vis-a-vis men? I would say C+ at best, if not D-. And in some cases, many women deserve an absolute F, and I would think they need to be flunked out of school. There's still a very strong attitude among a lot of women and among the culture generally that women are just better than men. And unfortunately, a lot of men sort of feel that and they accept it. Oh, I'm just a dog, man. Women are so much smarter than we are. That kind of attitude. So, there's an example of too much humility among men, thinking they're no good. I would say that the thing that needs to happen most critically right now for men and women to get along better is for women to be more honest about the fact that they're human and they really are not perfect. And they, as parents, are different from men, but they really are not better. They get better support, they get better opportunities, but given the job, they're not any better than men are. They'll do it different. They'll keep the house cleaner, maybe. But, as long as the man is keeping the house clean enough for it to be healthy for the kids, not covered in mold and mildew, her predilection, her preference for a super shiny kitchen counter is really not that much better than allowing a few dishes to pile up on the counter. But, women often think, well, that means I'm a better parent. I make a happier home. Maybe not. Maybe you're just stressing out the kids too.
Yeah. No, and I think that's a big point here, right? One may not be better than the other at a certain thing, right? There are going to be certain things that, women are better at. There are going to be very certain things that men are better at than women, right? There's those biological differences, right? Men
Yeah.
are naturally better at lifting heavy things. Women are naturally better at, fine motor skills. Men are naturally better at large motor skills. That's just biology. That's just human makeup. That's what happens when there's just two genders. One gender's better at some things, one gender's better at other things, right? And then, but there's nothing that really says that men can't be a better parent. There's nothing that says that moms are just naturally a better parent. Yes, there's more skills that are natural for women than there are for men, but men can learn those skills, but they may just do things differently, right? And that's the biggest thing. Is I've talked to a lot of people from different stay-at-home dads over time, right? I've talked to a lot of different stay-at-home dads. I was a guest on the Country Music Dads podcast. I'm not sure if that one came out. I'm pretty sure it did. But they're stay-at-home dads, right? And the biggest thing is that they just do it differently. I've talked to the founders of the Home Dad Con. Home Dad Convention, and that podcast. I've had Brock on. I've had some of those guys on the podcast. And the biggest thing is they just do it differently than the moms. They just do it differently, and that's okay. They just have a different way to do it. And guess what? The wives had to adjust to how they did it, and the men had to adjust to how they're doing it. They realized I can't do it her way. She doesn't do it my way. We're gonna have to find some compromise here, and that's okay. That's okay.
It's
One
even
way's
more
not
than
better.
it's even more than okay. It's actually good
Yes.
that men do it different. That way the kids can see two different approaches to, this aspect of life.
Yes.
And certainly when women got into corporations and started making headway in corporations, they did a lot of things differently from the way corporations had been doing them. Women introduced a lot more teamwork, a lot more collaborative spirit to the projects they were working on and to their jobs. And that was a good thing for the corporate work environment. It had its upsides and its downsides, but it was generally good to at least know and show that this could work in a corporation, that this way of being a, a manager in a corporation can work and it can make the employees happy. It's good to have variety and options and flexibility. And having two people contribute to a situation, again, is better than just having one brain on it.
Absolutely. Many hands make light work too. And it can be much better to have more hands, more eyes, more perspectives on different things. And that doesn't hurt anybody. That doesn't hurt anyone. It's okay. It's okay to have different opinions. It's okay to see different points of view. And so, because women's brain and men's brains are made up differently, right? They're totally constructed differently. Yes, we both have brains, but the way that they work, the way that they're wired is completely different. Right. And that's okay. It's good to have those different attacks, those different approaches to things.
I would say if they're not completely different, they are significantly different at the extremes, but there's a lot of overlap between, and I'm holding my fingers like this. I don't know, you can describe that maybe on the audio part, but there's a lot of overlap in the way men and women are. I mean, we are both human beings. And at the extremes where we had to polarize and specialize, that's where we develop differences.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Well, Jack, is there anything else you want to mention before we wrap this thing up? Close it out?
No, I do want to apologize to your audience for the fact that my computer crashed, and I am going to have to trash
They won't
that.
even know. They won't
Okay.
even know.
All right, good. Well, they're going to notice that this background is different, right?
If they're watching on YouTube, they'll notice. They'll be like, "Huh, what just happened?"
It was an
But we'll
earthquake.
see if they catch on. We'll see if they catch on.
Okay. No, I would love to come back because there is much more to say, but I don't want to overrun your time preferences.
Most definitely. No, we can definitely do something again. Well, it's been really fun to have you, Jack. It's been really fun to talk about this. It's always interesting to talk about sexism, but from the men's perspective and gender issues from a man's perspective that affect men, because no one really talks about it. We're probably one of the very few podcasts that will talk about it. I'll probably get flagged on YouTube for talking about it. But we'll see. A flag or strike on YouTube is fine. I'll probably get some
Yeah,
thumbs down and whatnot for
yeah,
posting some
yeah,
of this, but that's okay.
yeah.
Some of my feminist friends will probably, say something, message me, or get up in arms about it, and I'll just say to them, "It's okay, guys. It's okay, guys. Just chill. Just chill. It's okay. It's just a conversation. Open your eyes. Have a different perspective. It's okay. It's okay. These are our thoughts, not yours. We don't think for you. Someone else thinks for you, not us. We think for ourselves over here. You can go think for yourself, or try to at least. That's what I'll say to them. But regardless, Jack, thank you so much for sharing your insights and your expertise with me today and your knowledge. Your work is a powerful reminder that understanding and addressing gender issues in all their complexity is essential for building stronger, more equitable communities. And then to our listeners, if you'd like to dive deeper into Jack's work, visit malefriendlymedia.com. That's MALEFRIENDLY. There you'll find resources, articles, and more about creating a balanced and inclusive dialogue on gender issues. And again, until next time, thank you for tuning into Patriarchy Principles. Remember, strong leadership begins with understanding and empathy. And until that next time, stay courageous in your conversations, lead with integrity, and keep building a legacy of faith and purpose.